The galactic court was a place of spectacle and power, its vast marble halls echoing with the murmurs of assembled dignitaries and the ever-present hum of hovering cameras. In its center stood Caleb Thorne, a decorated human soldier known for his bravery and skill in the galaxy's most grueling conflicts. Before him, seated on an ornate throne of silver and obsidian, was King Zyron of the Arathian Empire, a towering figure with gleaming, reptilian scales and a voice that could silence the grandest hall. Caleb had been summoned for his valor in leading the Arathian forces to victory against a rogue insurgency, and the court awaited the king's reward. "Human Caleb Thorne," Zyron began, his voice a deep rumble, "you have proven yourself a warrior of unmatched skill and loyalty. As a token of my gratitude, I bestow upon you a gift befitting your station." Two guards entered, escorting a slender alien woman and a small child. The woman's iridescent blue skin shimmered faintly under the hall's light, and her eyes, golden and piercing, met Caleb's with a mixture of defiance and resignation. The boy clutched her hand, his wide eyes filled with fear. "This is Serena," the king continued, his tone casual as though offering a trinket. "A widowed servant and her son Mika. They are yours now, to serve as you see fit." A murmur spread through the court as Caleb stiffened. Slavery, while still practiced in parts of the galaxy, was a concept alien to him and repugnant to his principles. Yet, to refuse the king's gift outright would be seen as an insult, an act of defiance against one of the galaxy's most powerful rulers. He stepped forward, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within him. "I am honored by your generosity, your majesty," Caleb said, bowing slightly. "And I accept, with gratitude." Serena's eyes narrowed at his words, and Caleb caught the briefest flicker of betrayal. She thought him no different than the others who had claimed dominion over her. But Caleb had already made a decision. As the ceremonial proceedings concluded, Caleb led Serena and Mika to his ship, a sturdy, well-worn freighter named the Resolute. The tension between them was palpable as the airlock hissed closed, sealing them away from the prying eyes of the court. Once inside, Caleb turned to Serena, his expression softening. "I need you to understand something," he began, his voice quiet but firm. "I don't see you as property. Whatever the king believes, you are not my slaves." Serena's golden eyes blazed with skepticism. "Then why take us at all? Why not refuse and spare us this farce?" Caleb sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because if I refused, the king would have handed you over to someone far worse. I couldn't let that happen." Her gaze remained wary, but her grip on Mika's hand relaxed slightly. "So what happens now?" Caleb knelt to Mika's level, offering a reassuring smile. "Now, you're free. Both of you. As long as you're on my ship, you'll be treated as my equals." Mika looked up at his mother, who nodded hesitantly. Caleb rose, extending his hand toward Serena. "You don't have to trust me right away, but I hope, in time, you'll see that I mean it." Serena regarded him for a long moment before placing her hand in his. "Time will tell, human," she said, her voice guarded but less sharp. Over the next few days, Caleb made every effort to create a safe space for Serena and Mika. He assigned them comfortable quarters, stocked with necessities, and even a few luxuries he hoped would make them feel at ease. Micah, still wary but curious, explored the ship's nooks and crannies, his laughter gradually replacing the silence that had enveloped them. Serena, however, remained distant, her movements cautious and deliberate. Caleb noticed how her eyes darted to exits and how she tensed at the sound of unfamiliar noises. She was a survivor, hardened by years of subjugation. One evening, as the ship drifted through hyperspace, Caleb found her in the observation deck, staring out at the streaking stars. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said, approaching carefully. Serena didn't turn. "I used to dream of freedom," she said softly. "Of seeing the stars as something other than a distant promise." "And now?" Caleb asked, leaning against the wall. She finally looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Now I wonder if it's real, or just another illusion." Caleb met her gaze, his voice steady. "It's real, Serena, and I'll do everything I can to make sure you and Mika never have to live in chains again." For the first time, her guarded expression cracked, and something resembling hope flickered in her eyes. "We'll see," she said, turning back to the stars. As Caleb left her to her thoughts, he couldn't shake the feeling that saving Serena and Mika was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and the challenges ahead were daunting. But for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose. One tied not to duty or orders, but to something far more personal. The days aboard the Resolute were filled with an uneasy quiet. Mika's laughter occasionally broke the silence, but for the most part, Serena and Caleb kept their distance. Caleb understood her mistrust. Her life had been one of subjugation and betrayal, and he had yet to prove himself different. But Caleb wasn't one to give up easily. One afternoon, Caleb was deep in the ship's engine bay, fixing a finicky power conduit. The ship's hum had been irregular, and while it wasn't an immediate threat, Caleb knew better than to leave such issues unresolved. He was halfway through replacing a fried circuit when he heard footsteps behind him. "You're using the wrong flux spanner," Serena's voice said, quiet but certain. Caleb looked up, surprised. Serena stood a few steps away, her posture hesitant but her eyes sharp. "You know your tools?" Caleb asked, raising an eyebrow. "I was trained as a systems technician before." She trailed off, her jaw tightening. "Before everything changed." Caleb nodded, passing her the spanner. "Want to lend a hand? I could use another set of eyes on this mess." Serena hesitated, then stepped forward, taking the tool. Her movements were precise as she adjusted the circuit's alignment. Caleb watched her work, impressed by her efficiency. "You're good at this," he said. She shrugged. "It's been a while. The Regnari made sure I didn't forget, though. If you didn't work perfectly, you didn't eat." Caleb's chest tightened at her words. He wanted to say something, but he sensed she didn't need pity. She needed normalcy. "Well," he said, gesturing to the console, "you've just saved me an hour of troubleshooting. Thanks." Serena glanced at him, a faint hint of surprise in her eyes. "You're welcome." For the first time there was no edge to her voice. Later that evening, Caleb found Mika in the galley, perched on a stool and staring intently at a plate of ration cubes. The boy poked at them with a fork, his expression one of deep concentration. "Not a fan of the menu, huh?" Caleb asked, leaning against the counter. Mika looked up, his wide eyes bright with curiosity. "Do humans eat this too?" "Only when we have to," Caleb admitted with a grin. He reached into a storage compartment and pulled out a sealed container. "Here, try this." He opened it to reveal slices of dried fruit. Mika hesitated before taking a piece, his face lighting up as he chewed. "This is amazing," the boy exclaimed. Caleb laughed. "Glad you think so. Don't tell your mom I'm spoiling you, though." Serena appeared in the doorway just as Caleb spoke, her arms crossed. "Too late," she said, though there was no harshness in her tone. Caleb straightened, unsure how to interpret her expression. To his surprise, she smiled, a small, cautious smile, but genuine. "Thank you," she said, her gaze softening as she looked at Mika. "Anytime," Caleb replied, his voice steady. Serena sat down at the table, and for the first time they shared a meal together. Caleb told stories of Earth and his days in the military, while Serena spoke of her homeworld, a lush, forested planet that now felt like a distant memory. "Do you miss it?" Caleb asked gently. Serena nodded. "Every day, but I don't even know if it exists anymore. The Regnari." She paused, her voice faltering. "They don't leave much behind." "We'll find out one day," Caleb said with quiet determination. "And if it's still out there, I'll take you and Mika home." Serena's golden eyes met his, and for a moment, the weight of her sorrow lifted. "Thank you, Caleb," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The fragile peace they had built was shattered a week later when the Resolute sensors detected a Regnari patrol ship on an intercept course. The red warning lights and shrill alarms pulled Caleb from sleep, and he bolted to the cockpit, Serena close behind. "They found us," she said, her voice tight with fear. Caleb's hands moved swiftly over the controls. "We'll outrun them. Hold tight." The patrol ship fired as it closed the distance, plasma bolts streaking past the Resolute. Caleb pushed the freighter to its limits, weaving through asteroid fields and using the debris to mask their escape. "Shields at 60%, Serena reported from the co-pilot's seat, her fingers flying over the console. "We can't outrun them forever," Caleb muttered. "Then we don't," Serena said, her voice steady. "I can overload their targeting systems, but I'll need access to the core relays." Caleb glanced at her, his respect growing. "Do it. I'll keep them busy." Serena disappeared into the ship's depths, leaving Caleb to navigate the treacherous terrain. The patrol ship fired again, a bolt grazing the hull and sending a shudder through the freighter. "Mika, Hold on, Caleb called over the comm. In the engine room, Serena worked furiously, her hands moving with a precision born of years of necessity. Sparks flew as she rerouted power, the ship groaning in protest. Just a little more, she muttered, her heart pounding. With a final connection, she triggered the pulse. A surge of energy rippled outward, scrambling the patrol ship's systems. Its weapons faltered, and its engines sputtered to a halt. Caleb, it's done, she shouted into the comm. Caleb brought the Resolute out of the asteroid field, putting distance between them and the disabled patrol ship. When the danger had passed, he turned to Serena, who had returned to the cockpit, her face streaked with sweat and soot. "You just saved our lives," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Serena shrugged, though her exhaustion was evident. "I wasn't about to let them take us back." Caleb stepped closer, his gaze steady. "You're incredible, Serena. Don't ever doubt that." For a moment, the walls she had built around herself seemed to crumble. "You're not what I expected, Caleb," she said softly. "Good," he replied with a smile. "I plan on keeping it that way." As they settled into the quiet of the stars once more, Caleb couldn't help but feel that the bond between them had grown stronger. They were no longer just survivors, they were partners in a fight for freedom, and perhaps something even more. The hum of the ship's engines was a comforting background noise as Caleb and Serena stood in the freighter's workshop. The battle with the Regnari patrol had left them with damage to repair and time to reflect. While Mika played with a cobbled-together toy in the next room, Caleb handed Serena a toolkit, his expression serious. "We need to be ready for the next attack," Caleb said, gesturing to the spread of salvaged components on the workbench. "I want to upgrade the shields and weapon systems. You in?" Serena nodded, taking the kit. "After what happened out there, I wouldn't feel safe doing anything else." The two worked in tandem, the tension of their recent escape fading into a quiet rhythm of collaboration. Caleb explained his ship's quirks, while Serena offered solutions that were both efficient and ingenious. "You know," Caleb said, soldering a connection, "you'd make a hell of a starship engineer." Serena gave a faint smile, her eyes focused on the circuit she was rewiring. "I used to dream about working on ships like this. Before everything." Caleb paused, glancing at her. "What happened to you wasn't right, Serena. You deserve better." She looked up, her expression softening. "You've already given me better, Caleb. You gave Mika and me a chance." The moment hung between them, unspoken emotions filling the silence. That evening, while Mika slept in the small cabin Caleb had set up for him, Serena and Caleb sat in the cockpit, gazing out at the stars. Serena seemed lost in thought, her gaze distant. "You okay?" Caleb asked, breaking the silence. She nodded slowly. "I've been thinking, running isn't enough. The Regnari will keep hunting us until we do something to stop them." Caleb frowned. "What are you suggesting?" Serena leaned forward, her golden eyes blazing. "I worked in their systems. I know things. Codes, vulnerabilities. If we could get that information to the right people, it could turn the tide." Caleb leaned back, considering her words. "You're talking about starting a fight we might not win." "It's a fight worth having," Serena replied firmly. "For Mika, for everyone they've hurt." Caleb's gaze softened as he watched her, admiration flickering in his eyes. "You're incredible, you know that?" Serena smiled faintly. "I'm just tired of running." The next day, as they prepared to implement their plan, a transmission came through the comm system. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of an aging alien with weathered features. "Caleb Thorne," the alien said, his voice gravelly. "I am Larian Vex, a former commander in the Resistance. I've heard about your escape from the Regnari patrol. You've caught the attention of people who want to see the Empire fall." Caleb and Serena exchanged a glance before Caleb replied. "What do you want from us?" Larian smirked. "What I want is to help you. Word is you've got someone aboard who knows the Regnari inside out. That knowledge could be the key to crippling their operations." Serena stepped forward, her jaw set. "And how do we know we can trust you?" "You don't," Larian admitted. "But if you're serious about taking the fight to the Regnari, you'll need allies. Meet me at these coordinates, and we'll talk." The transmission ended, leaving Caleb and Serena in thoughtful silence. Caleb brought the Resolute out of hyperspace at the coordinates Larian had provided. The destination was an asteroid base hidden deep within a dense nebula. The base's lights flickered like fireflies in the dark, giving it an air of secrecy and danger. "Stay sharp," Caleb warned, steering the ship toward the docking bay. "If this is a trap, we'll need to move fast." Serena nodded, her hand resting on the blaster at her hip. Mika, sensing the tension, stayed close to her side. As they disembarked, a small group of armed individuals greeted them, Larian at their head. He looked every bit the grizzled veteran, his scarred face a testament to years of battle. "Welcome," Larian said, spreading his arms. "Glad you made it." Inside the base, Caleb and Serena presented the data Serena had retained from her time in the Regnari systems. Larian's eyes widened as he reviewed the files. This could change everything," he said, his voice filled with awe. "With this, we could strike at their supply lines, their communications. You've just given us a fighting chance." Serena crossed her arms. "This isn't just about strategy. I want guarantees. If we do this, Mika stays safe, no matter what." Larian nodded solemnly. "You have my word. The Resistance protects its own." As the meeting ended, alarms blared throughout the base. A scout rushed in, shouting, "Regnari forces inbound. They've tracked us." Chaos erupted as Resistance fighters scrambled to their positions. Caleb grabbed Serena's arm, his expression grim. "We've got to get out of here." "I'm not leaving without helping them," Serena insisted. "Then we fight," Caleb said, his voice resolute. Regnari ships descended on the asteroid base, their weapons tearing through its defenses. Caleb and Serena joined the Resistance fighters, using their knowledge of the Regnari to outmaneuver their forces. Serena hacked into the base's systems, rerouting power to critical shields and disabling incoming fighters. Caleb led a team on the ground, taking out Regnari soldiers with precision and determination. As the battle raged, Mika stayed hidden in the ship, clutching a small comm device Caleb had given him. "Stay safe, buddy," Caleb had said before leaving. "We'll come back for you." After hours of fighting, the Resistance managed to repel the Regnari forces, though the base was heavily damaged. Caleb and Serena returned to the Resolute, exhausted but victorious. "You saved us," Larian said as they prepared to leave. "You're not just allies, you're leaders." Serena shook her head. "We're just survivors, but maybe that's enough." As the Resolute lifted off, leaving the battered base behind, Caleb looked at Serena and Mika, his resolve hardening. "This is just the beginning," he said. Serena nodded, her gaze steady. "Then let's make it count." Together, they charted a course toward the next chapter of their fight, their bond stronger than ever and their purpose clearer than it had ever been. The victory at the asteroid base had invigorated the Resistance, but it came at a cost. The Regnari Empire was now fully aware of Caleb and Serena's involvement, and their retaliation would be swift. Despite the risk, the fight had only strengthened their resolve. Aboard the Resolute, Caleb gathered his crew, Serena, Mika, and a few Resistance fighters who had joined them after the battle. The mood was tense but focused as they discussed their next move. "We've disrupted their supply line, but that's not enough," Caleb said, pacing the room. "We need to hit them where it hurts." Serena leaned forward, her golden eyes blazing. "Their communications hub. I know the location. It's a heavily guarded station near the Regnari core worlds. If we take it out, we'll cripple their ability to coordinate their fleets." A Resistance fighter named Varek frowned. "That's a suicide mission. They'll see us coming from light years away." "Not if we go through the Morith Nebula," Serena countered. "Its energy storms will mask our approach, but we'll need precise navigation." Caleb met her gaze, a hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "Good thing I've got the best navigator in the galaxy." Serena smirked faintly, but quickly grew serious. "This won't be easy. If we're caught, there's no escape." Caleb placed a hand on her shoulder. "We've faced worse. Together, we'll make it." The journey through the Morith Nebula was treacherous. Violent energy storms lashed at the Resolute, forcing Caleb and Serena to work in perfect sync to navigate the deadly currents. "Left thrusters to 60%, Serena called, her hands flying over the console. "Got it," Caleb shouted, steering the ship as lightning illuminated the nebula's swirling gases. Mika watched from the back of the cockpit, his small hands gripping the seat. "Are we going to be okay?" he asked, his voice trembling. Serena turned briefly, her expression softening. "We'll be fine, Mika. Your mom and Caleb make a great team." Caleb grinned despite the tension. "You hear that, buddy? Nothing's stopping us." After hours of navigating the storm, the Resolute emerged from the nebula, the Regnari communications hub visible in the distance. "There it is," Serena said, her voice filled with determination. "Let's finish this." The communications hub was a massive, spherical station surrounded by orbiting defense platforms. The Regnari had spared no expense in protecting it, but Caleb and Serena had a plan. "We'll use the EMP charges we salvaged from the asteroid base," Caleb explained to the crew. "They'll disable the defense platforms long enough for us to dock and infiltrate the station." Serena nodded, pulling up schematics on the holoscreen. "Once inside, we head straight for the control core. If we can overload it, the entire station will be useless." Varric raised an eyebrow. "And how do we get out before it blows?" "We don't," Caleb said, his tone grim. "Not until the job's done." Using the EMP charges, the Resolute slipped past the defense platforms and docked with the station. Caleb, Serena, and Varric led the infiltration team, moving swiftly through the labyrinthine corridors. Serena's knowledge of Regnari systems proved invaluable as she hacked doors and bypassed security measures. Caleb kept watch, his blaster at the ready. "How much farther?" he asked as Serena worked on a console. "2 levels down," she replied. "But the core will be heavily guarded." As if on cue, an alarm blared and Regnari soldiers poured into the corridor. "Here we go," Caleb muttered, opening fire. After a fierce firefight, the team reached the control core, a massive chamber filled with glowing machinery. Serena ran to the central console, her fingers flying over the controls. "I'm starting the overload sequence," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. The chamber shook as the station's systems began to collapse. Regnari reinforcements arrived, and Caleb and Varric held them off while Serena worked. "Hurry up, Serena," Caleb shouted, blasting a soldier who had gotten too close. "Almost there," she replied, sweat beading on her brow. The overload sequence completed, Serena grabbed the data drive containing critical intelligence from the hub. "We've got it. Let's go." The team raced back to the Resolute as the station began to explode around them. Mika waited anxiously at the airlock, his face lighting up with relief when he saw his mother and Caleb. "Are you okay?" Mika asked, throwing his arms around Serena. "We're fine," she said, holding him close. "Let's get out of here." Caleb took the pilot's seat, pushing the Resolute to its limits as they fled the station. The explosion lit up the void behind them, a brilliant testament to their victory. Back in the safety of hyperspace, the crew gathered in the common area, exhausted but triumphant. The destruction of the communications hub had crippled the Regnari's ability to coordinate their forces, giving the resistance a critical advantage. "You did it," Caleb said, sitting beside Serena. "We did it." She corrected, her voice soft. As Mika climbed into her lap, Serena looked at Caleb, her golden eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you for everything." Caleb smiled, his heart full. "We're just getting started." As the stars streaked past the windows, Caleb and Serena shared a quiet moment, their bond stronger than ever. They had taken a stand against the Regnari, and for the first time, they believed they could win. Not just for themselves, but for everyone who had suffered under the Empire's tyranny. The destruction of the Regnari communications hub sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Systems that had once been silent under the Empire's oppressive rule now erupted with activity. Rebel groups, inspired by the daring attack, rallied under a unified banner. Messages of solidarity and calls to action poured in from planets long considered lost to the Empire's grip. Aboard the Resolute, Caleb and Serena sifted through the incoming transmissions. The faces of countless beings, human and alien alike, filled the screen, each carrying the same message: hope. "We've started something bigger than us," Caleb said, leaning back in his chair. "They're ready to fight." Serena nodded, her golden eyes shining with determination. "It's not just about survival anymore. This is about ending the Regnari's reign, for good." But amidst the flurry of hope, a transmission arrived that froze them both. The Regnari Emperor himself, Zythar, appeared on the holoscreen, his scaled face cold and unreadable. "Serena of the fallen Orathian people?" Zythar began, his voice a low growl. "Your defiance has gone too far. Return yourself and your companions to the Empire, and I may show mercy. Continue this rebellion, and I will ensure your suffering is legendary." Serena's jaw tightened as she stepped forward. "Your threats mean nothing to me, Zythar. You've already taken everything. What's left for you to destroy?" Zithar's eyes narrowed. Your son. The transmission cut out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Serena turned to Caleb, her expression fierce but pained. They won't stop until they have Mika. I can't let that happen. Caleb placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We won't let that happen. He's my family too, Serena. We'll protect him together. The two devised a plan. The Resistance's growing fleet would converge on the Regnari stronghold of Zathoria, the heart of the Empire's operations. It was a gamble, but if they succeeded, the Empire would be crippled. This isn't just about us anymore, Serena said as they prepared for battle. It's about giving the galaxy a chance to live without fear. The Resistance fleet emerged from hyperspace near Zathoria, a planet surrounded by an impenetrable ring of defenses. The Resolute led the charge, its once humble frame now equipped with upgraded shields and weapons. Caleb's voice rang out over the comms. This is it, everyone. We hit them hard, and we don't stop until they fall. For the galaxy. For freedom. The battle erupted in a dazzling display of fire and fury. Regnari warships clashed with Resistance fighters, their weapons lighting up the void. Caleb piloted the Resolute with precision, weaving through the chaos while Serena directed the fleet from the co-pilot's seat. They're focusing on the flagship, Serena called out, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. Then let's make sure they regret it, Caleb replied, launching a barrage of missiles that tore through an enemy cruiser. As the Resistance gained ground, Caleb and Serena led a strike team to the planet's surface. Their target, the Central Command Tower, where Emperor Zaithar controlled the Empire's forces. The ground assault was brutal. Regnari soldiers fought fiercely, their advanced technology threatening to overwhelm the Resistance fighters. But Serena's intimate knowledge of Regnari tactics turned the tide. Take out the energy nodes, she shouted, pointing to a cluster of glowing pylons. They power the defensive grid. Caleb and his team moved swiftly, disabling the nodes and clearing a path to the tower. Inside, they found Zaithar waiting, flanked by his elite guards. The Emperor's golden eyes fixed on Serena, his lips curling into a sneer. You think you can stand against me? Zaithar growled. You are nothing but a relic of a failed people. Serena stepped forward, her voice unwavering. And you are a relic of fear. Your time is over. The final battle was intense. Caleb and Serena fought side by side, their movements perfectly synchronized as they faced Zaithar and his guards. Caleb's blaster fire was precise, while Serena's blade moved with deadly grace. With a final decisive strike, Serena disarmed Zaithar, her blade pointed at his throat. Your empire is finished, she said, her voice filled with quiet fury. Zaithar sneered, but there was fear in his eyes. You'll never unite the galaxy. They'll turn on you the moment I'm gone. Maybe, Serena said, her gaze steady, but at least they'll be free to make that choice. She turned away, sparing his life, a choice that would echo throughout the galaxy. As the Regnari forces surrendered, the Resistance celebrated their hard-won victory. Caleb, Serena, and Mika stood together on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the planet of Zathoria below. We did it, Caleb said, his voice filled with wonder. No, Serena replied, her gaze softening as she looked at him. We did it. Together. Mika smiled, holding both their hands. What happens now? Now, Caleb said, his voice steady, we rebuild. A galaxy where no one has to live in fear again. As the stars stretched out before them, they knew their fight was far from over. But together, they had not only changed the course of the galaxy, they had found something greater. A family forged in fire, and a love strong enough to reshape the stars.